Welcome to the NoPo podcast, your home for non-political news, with your hosts, NoPo founder Vera Gibbons and media commentator Mitch Roschelle. NoPo, news without the noise.
It's that time. Christmas time is here.
Welcome to the NoPo podcast, everyone. I'm Vera Gibbons, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Mitch Roschelle and John Iannuzzi. Hello, Mitch. Hello, John. Every week, we talk about some of our favorite non-political news headlines, but today we are doing a special holiday edition, and we have three guests rather than one. So rather than talk about the big snowstorm, the latest vaccine news, the growing popularity of pizza during the pandemic, we are going to kick things off right away with our first guest, former CNBC anchor extraordinaire and legacy NoPo subscriber Bill Griffeth. He is also the author of a bunch of books, including a memoir called The Stranger in My Jeans, which is just riveting. You can get it on Amazon.com. It came out a couple of years ago. All I'm going to say is that Bill, who is a longtime genealogy buff, he takes a DNA test and gets the shock of his life. That's all I'm going to tell you. He is now working on a sequel to this book. He's doing a ton of cooking at home. His recipes are amazing. He's super fit. He's been on this super caveman type diet. And he fills in on CNBC every now and then when he feels like it, because he's that kind of guy. So welcome to the NoPo podcast, Bill. We're so happy to have you.
I'm so pleased to be here, Vera. I just feel like I'm on an Andy Williams Christmas special or something. This is very exciting. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's so exciting for us. I mean, people can't see you because we're audio only, but you've lost quite a few pounds and trimmed down nicely on the caveman diet.
The caveman diet. It's the Paleo Diet, which my daughter insisted. She was home for 6 months this year from grad school when they all went virtual. And she immediately put my wife and I on this Paleo Diet, which I fought tooth and nail until I started losing weight. And now, she went back to school. Then she came back again a week ago. And my wife has lost more than 20 pounds. I've lost 15 pounds at this point, and she has created a monster. So we are devotees now of the lovely Paleo Diet.
So for people who don't know what that is, it's nothing processed, no sugar, no bread. And I think you have
eat what the cavemen ate, basically, which is protein meats and fresh vegetables and fruits. No pasta, no bread, all those carbs, which I miss, by the way. But so we're on a modified paleo diet. So we get these cheat days periodically where we can eat whatever we want. And as you know, Vera, I'm a lover of Manhattans. And that was part of the agreement that the Manhattans stay in the paleo diet. I'm sure there was a caveman somewhere that had Manhattans when he would finish his day of hunting. So
I'm glad you.
Now, Bill, where does the Twinkie fit in? We've had a lot of Twinkie conversation on the NoPo podcast, and some of them may date back to the Jurassic period.
Yes.
So they may, in fact, be relevant in the caveman
There
diet.
is proof that cavemen ate Twinkies, and some of them are still around. So yes, I'm sure we could find room in the diet for those as well.
Looking good. It's definitely agreeing with you. So
Thank you.
Jumping right in. So in the past on the NoPo podcast, we've talked about, I'm down in Palm Beach, as you know, we've talked about all the families moving down here, putting their kids in new schools, buying up every house on Palm Beach Island. But we haven't talked about the big banks, the financial institutions, and the big corporate names. So many of these guys are leaving California, New York. They're relocating parts of their workforce to Texas, especially Austin, Florida, Miami, Palm Beach. I mean, we're being bombarded. I looked at the stats because I was curious as to how many of these guys have been coming down here. 70 hedge funds, private equity firms, and wealth management companies have relocated to Palm Beach County over the past couple of years. And of course, the trend accelerated when the pandemic hit. So we had Ken Griffin down here. Ken Griffin.
No relation.
No relation, right. So he came down here and he set up a trading floor at the Four Seasons last spring. And now we've got Goldman Sachs reportedly looking to move some of its team here. Jamie Dimon may move some of his team here. So without talking politics, Bill, what do you make of this?
Well, we're seeing a definite pivot point, and the pandemic has accelerated it, but it began anyway. And let's face it, it had something to do with taxes. Some of the high tax states have been at a disadvantage for the last 3 or 4 years, and it makes sense for these companies to want to move to areas where the taxation is a lot lower, and Florida is a good example of that, and Texas is as well. And so we're seeing this flight from some of the northeastern states, some of the western states, to other states where the taxation is different. But let's face it also, it's a lifestyle choice too. And I think we're going to be talking about this for the next few years in light of the pandemic, as we have been on this pause for the past year. People working from home like they haven't done before. They are discovering the joys of that, if in fact they are finding joys. And they're able to move wherever they want to be and still do their job if they're able to do it remotely. So I think we're going to be seeing this trend continue for the next several years here as we try to get back to some semblance of normalcy, whatever that's going to be. I think it's fascinating, actually.
Well, I like it down here. Mitch and John and I have talked about this on previous podcasts before. It's clean. Like you said, Bill, the lifestyle's great. I ride my bike every day. The garbage is picked up on most days. People are friendly. They're walking, they're biking. So I get it. And people are sort of doing a lot of self-reflecting during the pandemic, trying to figure out how they would like to live the remainder of their lives. I mean, people are doing a lot of soul searching going on. Exactly.
Look at Google. Google has already told their employees, they had been very, very active in Western Manhattan in New York City, buying up real estate, establishing a huge footprint. But now they're telling their employees that they won't have to come back to the office until next September at the earliest. I mean, it's almost a year away. And many of those employees are working from home, and they're just as productive as they were if they had gone to the office. And I think that we're going to see a lot of people get their eyes open to this and find a way to make this a permanent situation. My son works in the retail industry. He is a web developer for one of the major retailers, and he's been working from home since March. And they keep making noises, moving him back to the city in January sometime. But, as we know, things are starting to pick up again with the COVID in New York City. So it's going to be delayed again. And they have given these employees the option to either work a hybrid job where they would work 2 days a week in the city and then work the rest of the time at home, or work permanently from home. It's becoming a thing, where people are going to be able to make that kind of a choice. And I think it's fabulous, actually. It's about time, too.
I think the one interesting phenomenon before we move on will be if you were living in New York and getting paid New York wages, or if you're living in Palo Alto and getting paid Palo Alto wages, and because you're now working from quote unquote home and you moved back to Ohio, where this cost of living is lower and housing prices are dramatically lower, for example, does the employer have an obligation to continue to pay you those New York wages when you're in fact living in a place where the cost of living is half?
As it happens, my son, for this major retailer, they've been given the choice, as I said, to either work a hybrid where you'd work a couple days a week at the office in Lower Manhattan and then work the rest of the time at home, or work all from home. And if you work all from home, it's for lower pay. Yeah. So there is an adjustment there. And I can imagine that will become part of the norm going forward. But hey, it's a trade-off. You don't need as much in terms of expenses when you're working from home.
And it's funny.
Go ahead, John.
Some people listening around the country may not to fully appreciate just the cost. I look at what my wife would spend of commuting and working in Manhattan, the cost of getting there, the cost of lunch, of grabbing it's wildly expensive. That in and of itself is almost a boost in pay, not having to shell that out every day.
Exactly. And,
I
I don't want to make this totally New York centric because other major metropolitan areas around the country are seeing the same situation. There was a flight to urban areas for a number of years. That was the trend in real estate, both commercial and residential. Everybody was flocking to the urban areas of the country. And now they're going the other direction because of the pandemic, which I find fascinating. So it's not just about New York. You pick your favorite urban area around the country. People are heading to the suburbs in many cases, and it's having a huge impact on residential real estate prices in those areas. And I can imagine, Vera, that commercial real estate is going through the roof there in West Palm where you are.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Especially with these big guys coming down here. I mean, I've never seen Palm Beach actually be this crowded this time of year. I mean, it's jammed, even the bars and the restaurants, because we do have outdoor dining. A lot of these money guys are at the bars, restaurants, spending money and helping to fuel the economy here for sure. But yeah, commercial real estate looks pretty good down here, particularly relative to New York City, which I would imagine is not looking so pretty right now.
No, it's not. I have a friend who is looking to rent an apartment in New York City. He's got the pick of the litter right now. I mean, he has been doing the shopping, and he cannot believe the prices that they're asking. They're much lower than they used to be. You're very familiar with the real estate market in New York City, and I can imagine that it's a lot cheaper than when you left.
Oh, it's depressing to see it. I mean, I have an apartment still in the city that I would like to unload, but not at a yard sale price.
Right.
No.
I'll make a prediction before we move on, which is I think that cities are going to come roaring back.
I agree.
And I also believe that this remote work from home choice, I think people are going to, over time, and that over time could be quicker than we think, people are going to pivot back to the office. I think there's two reasons for that. One, I think there may be a political stigma about the people who, quote unquote, work from home. And I think that extra pay is going to be a motivating factor. And lastly, I think we're all dying to get back together with people personally. And I think when you feel left out of an inside joke on a Zoom call about something that happened in the office, people are going to say, you know what, screw it, I'm heading back. So I could be wrong, but if you make bold predictions, no one remembers when they're wrong. They only remember when they're right.
Exactly.
When they're right, we have the tape and we can just keep replaying.
I agree with most of that, but you may find this interesting from a person who has such a public job, or did for many years. I'm an introvert. So I have been in heaven for this year. You're telling me I have to stay home and I can't go out and be in crowded situations. This is perfect for me. So, people who have the same personality traits that I do, this has been a godsend.
Phil, this is news to me. I mean,
I'm aware.
But this is breaking news.
Yeah.
This is such big news.
And
He's
it's
such
not
an extrovert.
it's not to minimize, the tragedy that this has been, but I love being home. Heck.
Bill, I have a quick question for you before we bid you goodbye and go to our next guest. But when Vera introduced you, there was a DNA test that you took, and it revealed a shocking secret of a lifetime.
Yes.
Forgive me for not reading your book.
That's okay.
But I did read the show notes. So why don't you tell the audience that?
I don't mind telling you what it is, because the book has been out there for a few years, but I found out from this DNA test that my father was not my father. Chaos ensued. And what this sequel is about, thank you for asking, that I'm just finishing work on. I've heard from after my book came out a few years ago, telling my story, I heard from so many people who were in the same position. I thought my story was unusual, if not unique. Far from it. One of the unintended consequences of the growth of DNA testing in this country is the number of people who have found relatives that they didn't know they had before. They found issues about their paternity. I mean, I have heard so many hair-raising stories, and I'm telling some of these stories in this sequel that I'm working on right now. It's unbelievable. So if you're thinking of giving a DNA test kit for the holidays this year, make sure that you send it with a reminder of what's possible. Give them a copy of my book along with it or something.
A warning label. The one thing I can tell you, having lost my father recently and gone through a lot of belongings, including family photos, the similarity in appearance of my father, myself, and one of my kids, no DNA test required. And it would be an amazing coincidence, but for many out there, the popularity of the home DNA kits the last few years has been phenomenal, and that's probably for a variety of reasons. And can't wait to hear more about all of those folks in your new book. When's that coming out, Bill?
It'll be out next year sometime. We don't have a pub date yet, but yes.
Excellent. All right. Well, Bill Griffith, thanks so much for joining the NoPo podcast, our Andy Williams holiday edition of the NoPo podcast. And by the way, our next guest may rival you for best hat, but so far you've won best hat. The audience, unfortunately, doesn't get to see it, but it's very Palm Beach looking.
I wore this in honor of Vera. So there you go. Yeah.
On the YouTube version, I'll make sure that it's clearly displayed.
Excellent. All right. Well, Bill, thank you.
You bet.
I'd like to introduce our next guest, who is perfectly appropriate for a holiday special. Not that Bill was not. And apparently, according to the judges, we do not have a limit on the number of Mitches that we can have on a podcast. I believe it's 2. So if there's another Mitch that wants to get on this episode, sorry, dude, you're out. But Mitch Allen is Santa's head elf and the founder of Hire Santa at hiresanta.com. Former Shark Tank contestant, if I got that right. And and by the way, he's got an awesome hat because he's wearing a Santa elf hat, of course. And I think he's in his car. You're not the first guest to phone it in from the car. But without any further ado, my namesake and Santa's head elf, Mitch Allen, welcome to the NoPo podcast.
So glad to be here. And yeah, I'm in the sleigh right now, and so glad to be here and following Bill.
So tell us a little bit about hiresanta.com. Presumably, from what I did when I did a little Googling, if you want a Santa for an occasion, you are the go-to source to find a Santa.
That's right. So Hire Santa, we're the best place to find and hire Santa Claus. We really help brands associate themselves with Christmas through the use of holiday entertainers, primarily Santa Claus.
How many Santa Clauses do you have in your portfolio of clauses?
It's hard to keep count, but we have a couple of thousand Santas around the U.S., and we send them all over the world. So this year we've got a couple that we've sent to Dubai. We sent them to China in the past, the Caribbean, all over the world, but primarily here in North America.
And what is the typical price? Because there may be folks listening to the podcast, because this is going to air prior to Christmas, that want to get a last-minute Santa. So they're listening to the podcast. Christmas is a few days away. They want to get a Santa. Do the prices get higher as you get closer to Christmas Eve or Christmas Day?
That's a great question. There's a little bit of dynamic pricing going on here at Hire Santa. So yes, we have some of that. Really, though, we sell out of in-person Santas like around Thanksgiving every single year. We really need more Santa Claus entertainers, and that's sort of our limiting factor within the business at hiresanta.com. But this year, because of COVID, we've really increased the number of virtual visits with Santa. And even up to Christmas Eve, you can still get a virtual visit with Santa. Have Santa come into your home through your phone, your device, your computer, and have that great one-on-one experience with Santa Claus. And of course, not get out into a crowded shopping mall.
Right. I saw that, I guess, Macy's stopped doing the in-person Santa visits for the first time in 159 years. The other department stores, people just aren't doing it. They're too fearful. It makes sense. So I'm assuming your growth is primarily from the virtual arena. Right, Mitch?
Yeah. So it's very interesting this year. When the COVID really started taking shape in February and March and April, that's when we normally do our contracts with our big clients. These are people who have a full season Santa or have many locations that we staff all over the country. And so they really just sort of went quiet and disappeared for 3 or 4 months. But around June and July, it was very interesting as everyone seemed to realize that Christmas is still going to happen this year. And so we are still staffing many locations. Probably 20% said no Santa this year. But the others said, we're going to have Santa. How can we keep Santa safe? How can we keep children safe and still have that magical experience? And I would say that roughly 80% of our big retail partners are having Santa in person, but we're doing it either behind an acrylic shield or doing social distancing. And so that's really helped us maintain sort of our revenue this year. And then the growth has come because the rapid increase of virtual Santas from where you get it at hiresanta.com, but also our retail partners. Many of them were helping to staff their virtual visits as well.
Mitch, do you think that the virtual Santa, I think on last week's episode, we talked about the word of the year, and John's pick for the word of the year, even though the word, according to Webster's Dictionary, was pandemic, John's pick was virtual. Do you think the virtual Santa experience is going to stick, or is it just kind of a Band-Aid for this weird year that we're going through?
I think that some portion of it will stick. We're not going to have, this will be the high watermark for virtual visits with Santa, in my opinion. But next year, there will still be a number of people who want to have a virtual experience. And what's great about virtual visits is, one, it's less expensive than, say, going to a mall and standing in line and doing all of those types of things. But it's also more accessible to people in rural areas where they may not have a big shopping mall or may not have a big retailer within 50 or 100 miles of where they're located. And so this is a great option for people next year as well. But I do think this year is probably going to be 3 or 4 times, if not 10 times more than what it will be next year.
The one trend I've noticed, and the rest of you have probably seen this as well, is that Americans are celebrating Christmas like never before. I mean, they've got the holiday lights, they've got the decorations, they've got the inflatable Santas. They're going completely all out. And some of these stores are sold out of holiday lights. You can't find the stuff. You can't find wrapping paper. You can't find tinsel. You can't find anything because people are so happy just to get on to something happy with their family, celebrate Christmas, and say goodbye to 2020 and hello to 2021. So the Christmas stuff, the decorations, all that stuff, they rolled out earlier and earlier and earlier. The Christmas songs even came out earlier. And this is where I want to bring in the next guest, because I started hearing Christmas songs like in July. And I think it was because people were just thinking they associate Christmas songs with the end of a year. And it's been a horrible year in so many ways for so many people. So you put the radio on in the summer and the fall and you hear Christmas music all over the place. And people it really resonated. People liked hearing it early. It did well for some of the radio stations. And I want to have our next guest weigh in on this trend and then talk about something that she just put out, a very special Christmas video. This is my friend, American singer, composer, songwriter, designer, actress, philanthropist, entrepreneur, beauty. She does it all. She is also a personal friend, Consuelo Vanderbilt Costin. So she's just out with this new music video, which we'll talk about in a second. But first, Consuelo, welcome. And secondly, what do you think about the trend of music starting so early in the season, and how, what's your take on it in general? I mean, is my take right that we just want this year to be over with and it makes us happy to hear the Christmas music?
Well, Vera, it is a pleasure to be with you and to have experience this and to listen to all your incredible guests before. Mitch, I'm dying to really ask you more questions about how do you become a Santa? I'm fascinated by this. It's amazing. But I do feel that, there's been so much tragedy and so much loss this year that I think any semblance of happiness and light and joy, which is what Christmas and the holiday season is to all of us. Yes, hearing Christmas music in March and April, and as you said, June, makes so much sense. That there's a street in Vietnam. It is the craziest thing I've ever seen, which is completely dedicated. It's like a mile long, which is totally dedicated to Christmas in every different way, different Santas. I mean, it's mad. So that's actually goes on all year long. It's crazy.
You just came out with this new music video, I'll Be Home for Christmas. I've listened to it several times over. It's on YouTube. She has like something like over 20,000 hits or likes, or people love it. Tell us a little bit about why you did it and who the duet's with and where the proceeds go and all that good stuff.
So I was an incredible collaboration with a very dear friend and designer, Milan Breton. And we had actually last year, we sang together. And we just started talking, just saying it would be such a wonderful collaboration to do something. And we thought, what a better way to do this, especially this year, to bring a little joy and to do this for charity. And we just had the most amazing time. He performed in London and I recorded in New York. And then we filmed the video at the Vanderbilt Museum, which was my great-great-grandfather's home, which is in Suffolk County. Anyone that hasn't been there, please, you need to go. It's just a very, very special place. And they made Christmas really come to life. And so the proceeds actually go to a Broadway charity that Milan supports and also to the Vanderbilt Museum and helping them because it's been, with obviously COVID, it's been very tough for them.
How did you happen to pick the song I'll Be Home for Christmas? I mean, is it just a song that you like or you wanted to find something that was sort of had that nostalgic feel to it?
Coming home, and the whole video is like planes, trains, and automobiles. And I think right now, just everyone kind of, look, I think there's been, even in the sadness of what's transpired through this year, I think that we will learn really valuable lessons about being at home and with your friends and with your family, how important all of that is. So this, to me, was just the perfect song to actually represent all of that.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I've listened to it, like I said, several times over, but I did notice you had a special four-legged friend in the video. The dog that you go everywhere with, of course, made its way into the production.
Yes, Mr. Bugsy Malone. Oh, yes. He, of course, he can't just be Bugsy. He has to have... and he did. And I'm really impressed. I think for his first acting debut, I think he really was in full effect. I think, he was on cue. He really responded well. He didn't bite anyone, which is a miracle. So I'm telling you, we did well.
What type of dog?
He's a little mutt, which we love. He's a Pomeranian Chihuahua. He is a rescue. There's this amazing place in LA called Barks and Bitches. And this woman, Shannon Von Romer, literally goes and finds incredible dogs who need homes. And so we adopted this amazing little munchkin, who, by the way, has the worst reputation of anyone I've ever met. But that's
the dog bites all of Consuelo's friends, namely her best friends.
Yes. So he can't go anywhere. He can't travel anywhere. He's not allowed. It's
one of our girls had an issue with groomers. We would get a note pinned to her when she would get returned saying, she tried to take a chomp out of me.
Oh God!
So,
we have to love them.
Consuelo,
yes.
We applaud the adopt, don't shop trend that you've become a part of. I think that's really, really important. And one of the amazing things about this year is we sold out of RVs and dogs for adoption. And I think there's a silver lining. Forget about the RV part of it. That was just a complete non sequitur. But the fact that shelters have been cleared out of dogs, I think that's a blessing in and of itself. And I heard more and more families getting a dog from a shelter for the holidays. And I think we've crowded out the puppy mills because there was enough demand for adopting dogs. So that's a great thing this year and even for the holidays.
I think it's a wonderful thing. Love hearing that.
So does your dog have a SAG card? That's what I want to know. Because you said it was his first acting gig. Was it a...
Of course. And he will be getting royalties on this, his performance royalties, of course. He will start his own Instagram page because, he has new fans and he needs to keep up with the Joneses.
He's going to be an influencer?
He is, yes. We'll be selling out, Bugsy Malone products in the new year, Q1. It's going to be great.
Consuelo, before we wrap the show up, tell people where they can find you and the song and everything else. I follow you on Instagram. You always have these great posts. I follow Bill on Facebook. Bill's not on Instagram. He wasn't. He was hacked, so he's not on there anymore. But
Yes,
he's-
I was hacked by a Ukrainian, and they started posting porn photos on my Instagram account, and I heard from all kinds of friends wondering if I'd lost my mind, and so I canceled my Instagram account. That was the end of that.
Oh, I was going to ask you what your Instagram handle was, so I was going to go check that out, but unfortunately,
Yeah, it's all
you canceled
gone.
So-
Vera, yes, you can go to watch the video. It is on YouTube. It's on Vimeo. Please go and see that. And then to download the single, it's on Spotify, on Apple iTunes, on Tidal. The song's called "I'll Be Home for Christmas," and it's with my dear friend Milan Breton and myself.
And Mitch Allen, before we sign off, hiresanta.com, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Best place to find Santa is hiresanta.com.
And for next year, because this the listening of this episode is going to be epic, and I think people will keep listening to this one once they've downloaded it all year long. When's the best time next year if you want to get ahead of the rush for Santas? When do we when do you recommend people dial in?
Yeah, so for big companies, we start literally in January and February to start doing contracts for full season work. But clients and individuals, October, November, that's really the best time to start for holiday parties, company parties as well. And just one more thing, I really do agree with everyone that this year, Christmas is more important than ever. And we're seeing it at Hire Santa that people are yearning for the sense of tradition and for Santa more this year than maybe ever before. And they really do need that sense of continuity and family and tradition this year.
Amen. Amen. Mitch Allen, Santa's Elf, hiresanta.com. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
and also thanks to Bill Griffith, who is a longtime personal favorite of mine. I miss you, Bill. Consuelo.
Right back at you.
Yep, Consuelo Vanderbilt Costin, thank you so much. I hope to see you in person at some point soon.
Miss you.
And thank you all to our listeners for joining us on this special Christmas edition of the NoPo podcast, News Without the Noise.
Christmas Eve will find me where the love light gleams. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents by the tree.